Thank you all so much for participating in the activity. Now, I'm going to invite anyone who would like to share with the whole group what they came up with.
I'll go ahead and share.
Yay! Thank you so much, Adela. I was giving it a couple more seconds. Thank you.
Okay, so now, all right, I think well, you'll see my name on it. Group 3, I believe I'm slide number 1. Yeah. Okay. And it's interesting because we were chatting, like, even though this is such an open-ended opportunity, right, for us to share, I think sometimes we kind of put parameters on ourselves in terms of what you bring to the table, right? And it's about who's sitting in the room with you, right? So I want to start by, my name is Adela Rogers, and I put down a bottom right corner a Mexican flag because I was born in Mexico, in Totitlan, Jalisco, and I'm very proud of that because my primary language is Spanish, and I identify completely with second language learners because I still remember coming and having to figure out how to spell the word beautiful, right? Beautiful. So in terms of having parents that really, they could not help me with the English component of things, but they were on the journey with me. So that's the image of the road. And I think that we are all continuously just moving forward, moving forward and trying to do our best. I really identify as an educator, and I believe that that's one of my, no matter what space I'm in, like you said, I don't think I'm ever going to not be a teacher, whether I'm in the classroom or not. So that's the image of the children working in groups. And I specifically, particularly love working with small groups in helping them to accomplish their literacy goals. And so I spent many, many years as an interventionist. And honestly, I think those were my happiest times because I really could focus on what students needed in that moment of time and then helping their families. And that's kind of the shift that I'm trying to do in my career currently. I put an image of a woman crocheting because for all intents and purposes, I should be really crafty. My mom taught us how to do all kinds of things, crochet, cross stitch, all of these things. And recently I've traveled back to Mexico with her quite a few times. And I realized I don't know how to do any of that. And so I'm trying to relearn, right? And be a lot more creative with allowing myself to be creative. Sports, you mentioned sports mom. That's really my life right now. I'm a taxi driver and a sports sideline enthusiast. And then just equity, really an advocate for equity for all in all spaces. And I always tell my students and I tell colleagues I supported with classroom teachers and just the idea that there is room for all of us. There's space for all of us. And to never forget that. So anyway, that's me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Adela. I'm hoping that some of us were able to find some common ground with Adela. I can connect to the sports mom piece that you shared. I'm not quite the sports mom right now, but my daughter did soccer a couple of years ago. She's tried everything, and I remember my first game. I showed up with like a chair and a water bottle, and then there was a ton of parents with like canopies, generators, and I thought, wow, what a cool community. So I can identify with that piece. And of course, I'm also the daughter of immigrants. I'm the very proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. And so thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Adela. Right? I wanna. Why did we do this? Right? This is a PD about STEAM. What does who we are have to do with anything? Well, it has everything. It really has everything to do with with what the work that we're gonna be doing throughout our time together, because it's just so important that we take the time to reflect on our own identities and invite you, right, to carry those identities unapologetically and authentically into our work together, right? And that's the same thing that we want for our students. We want them to know and feel that they don't have to leave part of who they are at the door when they come into our spaces, right? Whether that's their cultural, their linguistic identities, right? all of the other things that and complexities and components that make up our identities. And so we want to model that here at CPE in our cohort together, right? And so also inviting you all to share those identities with us, because we do want to plan around, right, and tap into things that you all can relate to through your everyday experiences. And so that's why we felt it was super important just to make some time and space where we reflected on our own identities. Um, and so next, I'd like us to turn attention to our grant goals. And so, when in that cohort member profile, we asked you what did you want to get out of our time together, right, or out of being a member of the cohort. And so now I want us to take a few moments to review some of the goals and objectives that we've identified, right? And so we won't go out into breakout rooms, but I do want to give you about 5 minutes just to silently browse through our goals. And as you're browsing through those goals, just think about, are there any that resonate with you most, right? And we'll come back and revisit these goals together later more in depth. But for now, just the purpose is to give you the time and space just to do this, to reflect, browse through them, right? And as you read through the goals, perhaps maybe you can share in the chat any reaction, any live reactions that you have to the goals, right? Maybe identify a goal that speaks to you directly, right, or to your own hopes that you have for this work, or even just identifying a phrase or a quote that you found powerful in the goals. And so again, thank you for sharing some of yourselves in that identity piece. Now I want you to take that reflection, right, in that moment that you had to think about who you are, and just connect it with our goals and see which one resonates with you. And so we won't go out into breakout rooms. We'll just give you about 5 minutes to read through them, browse through them, right, and then any live reactions in the chat. And so if you want to turn off your cameras to read through them comfortably, right, that's okay. You can do that. And so we'll do a 5 minute timer, and then we'll come back, and again inviting you to share any live reactions in the chat. All right, so that's 5 minutes. I know we probably need more time for those, but we'll be revisiting our goals throughout all of our sessions, right? And so thank you for taking the time to review those. I saw some reactions in the chat. I see CABE really emphasizes access, language, and identity, right? Yes. Inquiry-based, play-centered learning. Huge in your district for kindergarten. Yay, that's good to hear. Thank you so much for sharing those live reactions, right? And so our hope is, right, that at least you were able to identify some of these goals and connect with your own reasons for joining us today. At the end of the session, we'll come back to these goals and just ask you to reflect, which one did you feel was addressed today, or which one did you feel, right, was at least addressed during our time together today. And again, we'll have an opportunity to revisit these throughout all our time together in until 2027, right? And so thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our math mindsets matter, right? And so we are going to continue exploring our own feelings and thoughts about math. And so the term math mindset describes how we feel and what we think about math. And so together we'll reflect not only on how our own math mindsets impact us personally, right, in thinking of our identities, of our math identities, but also how our own perceptions, our own math mindsets helps us shape the way we support and interact with the children and families that we work with. And so with that, I want to share with everybody that everyone will have access to a participant folder where all the resources that we share with you will be housed in. And so if you if you click on that participant folder link, once we're done with today's session, a copy of the slide deck will be in there. All of the resources and some additional resources will be available there for you to access, right? And so just want to make sure that everyone puts a bookmark on that, right, so that you have easy access to it later when should you need to access it. Um, And then now, we do want to highlight, right, that the Count Play Explore professional learning resources were made possible by Count Play Explore, an early math and science initiative that is led by Fresno County Superintendent of Schools and their Early Care and Education Department. The initiative is generously funded by the California Department of Education and the California State Board of Education. And so these resources were developed also in collaboration with West Ed and other partners, and again, they're intended to be used as a guide for implementing evidence based strategies, promoting active learning, and encouraging developmentally appropriate practices in early ed settings. And so, just want to highlight that before we continue to our the rest of the content. All right. And so first, we want to take some time to talk about how our own feelings and thoughts about math develop in early life, and how and why that really matters, right? So we'll move into exploring strategies for building and promoting a positive math mindset after we have some reflection on our own math mindsets. And a way that we'll do that and explore those strategies is by engaging in a playful math activity together. And so, again, bringing some joy and playtime to math. And as we go, we're also going to practice using growth mindset language to express our feelings and our own thoughts about math. And then finally, we'll reflect on how our own math mindsets don't just affect us, right? But they can also shape the way others around us, including especially our students, feel and think about math. All right. And that brings us to our next collaborative activity. And so we all had to reflect on different components of your identity, right? But now I want us to focus in specifically on how we feel about math. And so to do that, we are going to write a letter to math. And so that'll take us into our second collaborative activity for the day. And so Denise is gonna, if she hasn't already, she'll drop in. There it goes. So in that same slide deck that you worked on earlier, if you scroll down, you'll see the slide deck for the second math activity. And so for this second math activity, go ahead and claim your slide. So you'll each be working on an individual slide. And what we're doing now is writing a letter to math, right? And so we have some prompts for you that might help you in that. But again, should you feel like you want to add anything else, please feel free to do that. This is your letter to math. And so we're providing some guidance, but you have full creative, right, flexibility with this. So I want us to think about, before we go in your breakout rooms, and think specifically about math. And as we're writing our letter to math, think about, as a child, when you thought about math, how did it make you feel? Right? Think of a powerful memory you have of math. Think about any family memories or experiences you had around math. And then also think about growing up. Did you have any teachers tell you anything specifically about math that still sticks with you today? And so you're writing a letter to math. We have some sentence frames for you all to use, but if you feel there's anything else you need to add for this first part, please go ahead and do that. And so we're going to send you off to breakout rooms where you'll write your letter around math. And also, if you feel like having a conversation with your group would be helpful, please feel free to engage in that conversation, right? We send you off to collaborative groups on purpose, because having someone to think with and partner with is usually super helpful. And so, while it's not specifically named on there, right, have a conversation with your group. Think about your feelings around your previous, right, feelings about math. So let's take it back to our childhood and write math a letter. And so with that, we'll send you off to breakout rooms, and we'll do about 7 minutes for this one. I think it should be enough. If you want to add images, if you want to change the template, go ahead, right? Full flexibility on this one for you all. Get creative. But again, you're writing your letter to math.
Right. Breakout rooms are
That when Thank you so much for hitting record. I know that when I first saw this activity, it took a while for me to really think and reflect back on how I felt about math as a child, right? And so not something that we do very often. And so it did take quite a couple of minutes for me to sit down and really sit with those feelings and come up with something, right, for these prompts. And so thank you so much for engaging in that activity. I'm hoping that someone can share their Dear Math poem for part one, right? As we reflect on our experiences and feelings towards math as children. And so tapping into some of those early math childhood memories. Is anyone willing to share their poem?
I'll share mine. It's very negative.
Thank you. No, that's it's okay, right? That's why we're here to tap into some of those memories, right? And reflect on our math mindsets and then together work on shifting some of those math mindsets. So thank you so much. Yes.
Okay. Dear Math, you were my biggest frustration always growing up. You were very challenging for me throughout all my school years, even up to college. You were so difficult to understand. I remember going home to ask my single mother to help me understand you, but she said she learned you different in Mexico. When I saw you or was taught about you, my anxiety would rise and I was never interested. It wasn't until a math course in college where you finally clicked and I enjoyed you better.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing your story. I'm sure your story resonates with several of us in this chat, right? Myself included. But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. And so we'll come back and revisit these poems, right? There is a part two and a part three that we'll revisit today. But that was such a powerful reflection, right? Which reminds us why it's so important to just take time to intentionally reflect on our own feelings and thoughts about math. Um,
We
and
have one more volunteer.
yay, thank you so much, Gabriela.
Hello, and to the previous participant, I'm sorry you had such a bad experience with math. It makes me more grateful for my family. I had a grandfather who had been an engineer in Mexico, but when he came here, his degree wasn't valid. And so he had to work, the TV repairman and other things. But he always would tell us that he would teach us about math. So my poem, because he said, whatever I give you, no one can take away. And so as an adult, I get emotional because I have a book called My Grandfather Gave Me the Stars. And so this is called Dear Math. As a child, when I thought of you, I felt excited. I remember mi abuelo sitting in the yard on summer nights teaching us about the stars and the mathematics of the universe. I remember I'm sorry. I remember my mi abuelos in the yard on summer nights in the Mojave Desert teaching us about the stars and constellations. I remember my family telling me that math held the secret to understanding the universe. It was a way to connect to our ancestors across time. And so I associate math with like trying to understand, time, the passage of time. Sorry, and my family. So thank you. Sorry, I got emotional, but yeah, I'll tell you a joke before I start leave it too heavy. He would say, soy un hombre muy bajo y pobre. Yo no puedo comprar nada de Cabbage Patch ni My Little Pony. So, I'm a very humble and poor man. I cannot buy, toys like Cabbage Patch Kids, My Little Pony. He goes, but what I can give you, no one can take away. And now I know that was the knowledge and science that he had. So I always say he's my first STEAM teacher because we always spent time in his workshop in Needles, California. He was repairing TVs and he would teach us about science, how to use electronics. And he was the first person that told me that it was a Mexican inventor who invented color TV before we ever saw it on the internet. So thank you very much.
No, thank you so much, Gabriela, for sharing your powerful story and the story of your grandpa, right? And the important role that he played in your childhood and feelings toward math, right? It's these stories that we have to take time to reflect on and share with each other, right? Because they really guide our work, and we don't leave those stories behind. They come with us every day into our classroom or in whatever capacity we work with, right? And so just taking the time to reflect on these is super powerful, and will be powerful for the work that we'll engage in throughout the next year. So thank you so much, Gabriela, for sharing the story of you and your grandpa with us. Um, and so, why again it's important to reflect on our own feelings and thoughts about math? It's because it can open the door, right, to more meaningful learning. And that's not just for ourselves, but also for other adults that we work with, and most importantly, the children that we serve. And so, while we've just begun exploring our past experiences with math, we are going to continue, right, digging into those, taking a deeper dive into our thoughts and feelings about math throughout our session today. And again, these reflections are so important because they really set the foundation for everything we do moving forward, with our cohort. And so, if we can go on, thank you, Denise. There it goes. And so everyone has a math mindset, right? And math mindsets really do matter. And this idea that math mindsets matter is at the heart of what Count Play Explore does, right? And their approach to professional learning. And when we take the time to talk about math mindsets, we're really talking about two different pieces, right? The first is math attitudes, and that's how someone feels about math, right? And so, for example, do you think math is really that important? Do you think math is boring, or do you think math is exciting and fun, right? And do you connect it with joyful experiences and powerful memories like the one Gabriela just shared? And then that second component to math mindsets are our math beliefs. And so this is what we think about our own math abilities as well as the math abilities of others. And so just thinking of things, have you ever heard expressions like, oh, they just have a math brain, or things like, oh, math is just not my thing, right? So some of those things you may have heard regarding around math beliefs. And so together, math beliefs and math attitudes, right, they shape the way we approach math. But going beyond that, they also influence how our students and colleagues experience math in their own lives, right? And so if we can go on to the next one, right? Your math mindset is it's shaped by your environment and by your lived experiences. And so really from the time you were born, you've probably experienced math every day, right? In different ways, whether that's through daily routines, through play, or through later math activities, both at home and at school. And along the way, you may have received messages, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, from those people who were around you, right? And how they feel and think about math. And so when we go back and think of our earliest memories with math, right, they might include moments of excitement, joy, and growth, or they might also include moments where they generated fear or anxiety, right? And so just sharing a quick personal anecdote, right? I have a friend who's a math teacher, and he is completely in love and enthusiastic about math. And so he's sort of carried that on to his daughters, right? And now their daughters are enthusiastic and have this huge love for math, right? But again, these experiences with math can also generate fear, anxiety, or even embarrassment. And just reflecting on my own experiences with math, oh, I can think of a moment in eighth grade during algebra. My teacher would pass out graded math exams in order of scores from lowest to highest. And so we're all sitting there, and we knew that the first person to get their test back was the one with the lowest score. So imagine imagine waiting, sitting there and thinking about the order that you were going to be called in. I go back and I think of that moment and my heart still starts racing a little bit, right? My 8th grade, Natalie in the 8th grade algebra class worried about what order she's going to be given her test back in. And so it just, all of this to say, right, to highlight that it's important that we are aware of our own math mindsets, our own beliefs around math, because those feelings that we have ourselves, right, can be carried on to and influence our students and children that we serve. And so that's why, right, it's important that we take the time to dig into our own math mindsets, explore those, because they have such really huge consequences in the way our children and communities that we serve perceive math, right, what they take from us. And so in the next one, there it goes. There is research behind this, right? And so research shows that adults' math mindsets play a super important role in children and early math experiences. And I think we just heard that from the stories you shared, right? And so adults who value math or place a high value of math and are more just aware of the importance of math in early ed, they tend to spend more time doing more math with children, right? And so when thinking about math attitudes and beliefs, we have to take this into consideration. Because those adults that have a positive connection to math feelings and belief can support, in turn, support children, right, to also develop those positive math feelings behind math. It's also important to know, right, that when adults use positive language about math, they're sending a message to students that math is for everyone, right? Math is for every child. Specifically, right, want to highlight this, that math is for every child of any background, of any gender, of any race, of any culture, ethnicity, ability, language, or social economic status, right? So just being mindful of our own math mindsets, the language that we use around math, and how that energy, right, is transmitted to children in our classroom or our colleagues that we work with. And so now I want us to take, it's a super short video, right? But it's an educator and they're reflecting on their own math beliefs and mindsets. And so we're going to watch the video. And as you watch the video, I want you to think, are there any connections, right? Any connections to your own feelings and thoughts about math? And so just real quickly, we'll watch the video and then we'll drop. I'll ask someone to share reactions to the video, and you can also share those reactions in the chat.
Just quickly unsharing to make sure you can, I'm also sharing my sound. So just if Natalie, if you can give me a thumbs up to make sure that you're able to hear the sound.
So growing up, I did not like math. I just didn't feel comfortable with it. I was scared of it. But as I take these trainings more and more, I can see that math is everywhere, and I'm a little more comfortable with it.
In my early math memories, I actually love math. I love counting and sorting and I loved playing with numbers. I loved learning number facts. 3 plus 5 is the same as 5 plus 3, and to make 8 you can do 2 and 6, or you could do 1 and 7, or you could do 7 and 1, and to me it was exciting and fascinating that no matter how you put it, it's the same.
Just knowing that it doesn't have to just be addition or subtraction. It could be patterns, colors, letters.
I was always fascinated with numbers. I I love math. I'm not good at math, but I love math.
I love how she ends. I'm not good at math, but I love math. All right. So now I'm going to invite someone to share, right? Were you able to relate to the feelings and thoughts that were shared in the video? I know I was. Or also feel free to drop it in the chat, right? So just extending that conversation on our own feelings of math. Anyone feel anything similar to what these educators just shared?
For me, math was a class, at least in high school, that I had to, middle and high school, that I had to work really, really hard at. So I necessarily didn't like it. It just didn't come naturally to me. Like in college, same thing. I had to go to all the math office hours. I was practically there all day, every day. And in high school, and I earned a C. That was my first C, but I worked so hard for that C, and I would always get, straight A. So for me, it was like it just didn't come as naturally as everything else did. So it was just like I understood how someone else for language arts, it didn't come naturally, and they had to try really hard. It was just like before we were like, I don't get it. How do you not get it? And then I got to math, and it was like, oh, some people are more artistic, some people are more, mechanical in their brain. And for me, it was more like, oh, people have natural different strengths. And for me, that one is I had to work really hard to really understand it and lots of practice. And that's how it was for me. I just had to try really hard. But as a teacher now, that's the one I find the easiest to teach because it's so methodical and it's so like it's step by step. That's the one that I find the easiest to teach because there's structure, there's systems. So I'm doing kinder right now, so it is on the easier side, but that's why I do enjoy it because it's so, it's so consistent.
Yeah, we as teachers, we like having a plan, we like having structures, right, that we can follow, which is so interesting that you bring up because a lot of this work, right, and we'll talk a little bit about it today, but it's thinking about how we can bring these joyful experiences, right, into math so that it's not always so methodical and structured, but so that it's fun, it's joyful, and children are learning math through play, right? And so thank you so much for highlighting that and sharing your experience. I also see in the chat, I feel like the last speaker, I love it, but I'm not great at it, right? I think same here. My relationship with math has sort of shifted throughout the years. Some years I loved it, some years I didn't like it, and now I'm back to loving it. um, and so we'll talk about right more of our feelings and thoughts about math and how those influence right the people that we work with, the children that we work with. And so we could go on, right? So our feelings and thoughts about math are shaped by our lived experiences. I shared with you, like my eighth grade algebra teacher would pass out test scores in order. Oh, that was so nerve-wracking. And so those experiences now, right, manifest themselves in the way we feel about math. And so the important thing to remember is that even as adults, right, we can change and grow our math mindsets. Those aren't fixed because they're shaped by our experiences. And so if we have access to joyful experiences with math, then the hope is that those of us, right, with not so positive experiences with math can shift our mindsets. And so, again, by taking the time to reflect on our own math experiences, both the positive, right, and the challenging, we just really are putting ourselves in a stronger position to support children. And we want to make sure that we help students understand and develop and be confident about math, right? And since the early start, develop these positive math mindsets that we're not people contributing right to math mindsets that can cause anxiety or fear. We as educators obviously want to step away from that and give children these positive experiences at a very, very early age.
Natalie, this is Veronica. I just want to share my really quick my
Yes, of
experience.
course. Thank you. Yes.
Um, I didn't know I was learning mathematical concepts with my grandma at a very young age, because we didn't have any of those fancy toys. So I learned my colors by like my duties as a kid was you go chase all the chickens and put them back in the chicken coop, right? So I didn't know the colors. I didn't know how many. Yeah, I didn't know how to count yet. But she would tell me like the brown one. Make sure that the black one is in there. Make sure that the yellow one is in there. So I'm like, which one is the yellow? Which one is the black one, right? So she'll point at it, and so that's how I learned my colors. And then eventually those colors turn into numbers, right? So I didn't know I was learning and those concepts. That's a very I was what, like maybe 4 or 5. I didn't get to go to kindergarten because we had no money, but my grandma was teaching me all those things, without me knowing. So I am very thankful for my grandma too. Even though she was not a teacher, but she showed me the early stages. So yeah, that's my story.
No, thank you so much for sharing, Veronica. You bring out up another powerful point, right? A lot of the times we as educators think, or not we as educators, right? But a lot of people think of math instruction as confined to like the boundaries of the classroom, right? This is where math happens. But another huge component of the work that we're doing together is making sure that we highlight and celebrate those math experiences that are happening in our everyday lives, right? Like you said, you were gathering the chickens, right, and putting them where they belonged, and there's a connection to math there. So another part of the work that we'll be engaging in is identifying practices in the home that are already connected to math, right? And so just thinking every day we do math, and our students, we have to be explicit about letting our students, our families and communities know that they're already math experts, that they're already engaging in math through their daily practices, right? And so highlighting that and bringing that to sort of shift away from that idea that only teachers, right, are teachers of math. We heard earlier with Gabriela's story, right, and her grandfather. Math knowledge comes from also our communities and our parents, and it's just as valuable as the math instruction that they're getting in a classroom, right? So thank you so much for highlighting that. Yeah, we were having a conversation the other day about what are some of the ways that we do math every day, and someone said, well, laundry, right? When you do laundry, you're doing math. The other day I was coming home from Costco and I was having to arrange everything in my trunk. Well, the way I organize that, right, it's spatial awareness. There's a math component, there's geometry in those everyday practices that we do, and those aren't always recognized. And so part of the work that we'll be engaging in is also recognizing that, right, that math is everywhere, it happens in our everyday lives, and those experiences at home are just as valuable as those experiences in the classroom, right? So thank you for sharing that. And if anyone else ever feels like they want to add, right, please go ahead and unmute yourselves and jump into the conversation. I'm loving hearing all of your stories. And so, promoting a positive mindset, right? We talked about engaging in new experiences, right? That can shift maybe the way you felt about math in the past if those experiences weren't always the most positive, right? And so now we'll explore a couple of ways to promote a positive math mindset with those you work with. Um, and so I've already mentioned play a little bit, right? But we know again that play is an essential part of young children's lives. And as children play, they can explore math concepts, they're solving problems, and they're making very meaningful discoveries, right? And at the same time, they're also developing language and communication skills, right? They're also working on building relationships and processing feelings while they're engaging collaboratively around joyful math experiences. And so we know that for children, but we also know that play isn't only for children, right? Play is also an important part of adults' well being. And so during play, we as adults also experience joy, right? It can help our self confidence, it engages our imagination and empowerment. And so engaging us as adults in playful math experiences, right, can also help bring curiosity and excitement to math learning, right? And it can help promote a positive math thinking for ourselves if we ourselves are engaging in those playful math activities. Um, and so just in the chat, I want us to think about play, right, as adults. And so what makes an experience playful for you? And so how does that bring you joy, right? How do you have fun through play? And what emotions do you experience as you play? And so thinking as adults, right? Because again, play isn't only for children, it's good for us adults too. So think of, I don't know, what was the last time you felt you played, right? And what experience and feelings did that experience generate for you? I know I play Uno with my nieces and nephew and I get super competitive, right? But it's always it's always a fun time once we get over the arguments. But when was the last time you felt you engaged in play, and then what feelings did that generate for you? I know it's kind of a challenging one, right, to think of as an adult. But are there any games you play on your phone, maybe? board games, basketball, pickleball, yeah. And so what feelings and emotions do those activities generate? Try something new in low stakes environment. Yes, peers cheering you on. Dominoes with your kids. Yeah.
If I can share something, this is
Yes,
Veronica
please,
again.
please.
For me, I just thought about it right now. It depends. I mean, with my family members, the youngest one, as of 4 years ago, he was 18, and then a baby came along. So now the baby is 4 years, and now I'm finding myself like not to do like well, we used to play different things like loteria, board games with the older kids. But now for little one, my little niece, I have to be more active, and I'm finding out that my games have changed. Like I couldn't jump anymore as many times as I did before. So it depends on who are you interacting with. I mean, if it's all adults, your games are going to be different, right? But when you have little ones at home, the very basic like jumping, like running around, it's not as simple as before. At least in my case.
Yes, I have a 10-year-old daughter and I definitely resonate with that, right? It takes a lot more to keep her entertained and engaged, but we find a way, and like you said, sometimes it's the simplest things. It's playing with her like hide and seek or those easy things that we don't always think of as play, right? But oh, someone said I'm playing with Play-Doh right now and it's very relaxing. Yes, that's great to hear. And so just thinking, right, that play isn't only for children, it's for adults also. And the feelings that play generates with us as adults, we're going to try to tap into some of those feelings. And so in our sessions and in our work together, we're going to try to embed some of those playful activities with you all here also, right? And then we'll reflect on how we felt after those activities and how engaging in play and these hands-on activities, right, should generate joy, right, and should work toward building a more positive mindset. All right. And so with all of that said, oh, jump rope. I'm reading on the chat. I'm loving reading these in-game numbers, memorize songs. Yes, so lots of cool and fun activities, right? That bring and generate joy, relaxation, right? The playing with the Play-Doh. I think I saw someone say painting or making art. That's always relaxing. And so thinking of those playful experiences, again, we want to bring some of those into our space and our work together for you as adults. And so before we go into our first play activity, right, it is 10 in the morning. I want to make sure to give us a break. And so we'll go ahead and do a 20-minute break. And when we come back, we'll get to playing with our first activity. And so let's go ahead and take a 20-minute break. We'll see you all at 10:20, and then we'll jump into that activity that we have planned for you all today. Don't sign off, right? Turn off your cameras. We'll be back and see you all in 20 minutes.
And if you're able to, return with a piece of paper, could be any paper, sticky note, any paper, and then something to write with for the activity, if you're able to.
Thank you, Denise. I had forgotten. Oh, what beautiful art, Gabriela.
That's one of the paintings that I made for my book. So I put it on there so you guys could see the illustration that goes with my story because it's not published yet, but I did an art show for the High Desert Astronomical Society. And so I did that about 3 weeks ago up here in Apple Valley, California. And so I have some of my paintings. That one of them's of Dr. Jose Hernandez, our Chicano astronaut, and then this one was the painting from my grandfather gave me the star. So I just put it in the chat if anybody wanted to see it. I never sell the art, but I always just share it for free because I like telling our stories and teaching people about our history, right?
Yes, thank you so much, Gabriela. And so you're working on getting that published?
Yes, I
Or
am working on publishing my books right now. But I started doing the art as a what is it, self-care therapy. Um, and so I like painting all my memories and like just telling people the stories and teaching them about science, math, and then Chicano history.
Oh, it's beautiful art. Maybe we can connect sometime individually, and if you're willing to share some of your stories with us in the group, right, that we can share with everyone, that would be, I think, super powerful and really what this work is all about, right?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that'd be cool. I did my I presented at CABE back in March in Long Beach. My show was called Regalo Regalo y Legado, like memory and legacy. Recuerdo y legado. I'm sorry, I need to drink more coffee.
Oh, yes.
Recuerdo y legado, memory and legacy. And so I shared some of my paintings, and then I always give away postcards for free of the art.
Oh,
Okay, well,
yeah. I think maybe later we can connect and see maybe how we can embed some of your art, right? And make sure that people have access to it, because it's such a beautiful story and such a beautiful piece.
well, thank you. All right, well, I'll take a break. I know I need to
Yes,
get some
more
coffee
coffee.
later.
Yes, enjoy your break.
I
Everyone, I'm going to give everyone a couple seconds to make their way back. Hopefully you had time to get a refill on that coffee or tea or your beverage of choice this morning. All right. Just give a couple seconds for everyone to make their way back, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our first play activity with the day, right? So just a couple more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and get started. During the break, I was taking the time to read through some of your poems. They are so beautiful, and just what stood out to me is like the the spectrum, right, of our math mindsets and feeling towards math, and just how different our experiences with math as children have been, right? And so I read some poems with super positive math experiences, and other ones, right, that were more challenging. And so just digging into those, I just lots to think about, right, and to consider as we work together. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue with our first activity for the day, right, which is playing with patterns. And for this activity, we are going to go back into our breakout rooms. But before you go back into breakout rooms, I want to review some of the instructions for what we'll be doing together. And so we want to think about, I saw this in one of the poems too, right? It said, when I think about math, right, all I think about are numbers, but now I see that math is a lot more than numbers. And so perfectly ties to this activity, right, where we are going to be playing with patterns. And so when you go back to your breakout rooms, I want you to think about what comes to mind when you think about the word pattern. And to consider how patterns are present in your everyday life, and then also consider how patterns are present in your cultural background, right? Or, like I said, everyday practices. And you'll have these slides with you in your collaborative activity slides, so you'll also have these as a guide as you're working on this activity. So first, you'll have a conversation with your group about anything that comes to mind around the word pattern. And then we're going to invite you to move around your environment and observe, feel, touch, right? Different objects and surfaces. Think about, look at tiles in your home, maybe tables, some chairs, if you have baskets, right? And we want you to notice and try to identify some of these patterns that you're noticing, right? And so in doing that, notice maybe lines, any shapes, colors, or textures, or even sounds that you can hear, right? And so we want you to go explore your environment and find a pattern. Now, if you can't find a pattern, then you also have the opportunity to make one. And so before sending you off to break, Denise asked to keep pencil and colors or something to write with at hand. So if you can't find an existing pattern in your environment, then you can create your own pattern by making it or by using other objects, right? And so I don't know, this is what I have directly in front front of me, I have some Dave and Buster's gift cards. So thinking of what do you have that's accessible to you there in your space, where if you can't identify a pattern, you can create something with what's right there next to you. And then we're going to invite you to snap a picture of those patterns you find or create, and post it on our oh my gosh, the word skipped my I need more apparently I needed more coffee too. There it goes, on the Padlet. I don't know why I didn't remember the word for Padlet. And so you're going to post it on the Padlet, right? And so we'll give you all a few moments to do that. And then in your group, you are also going to work on then creating a visual representation for that pattern. And so if we go back to the slide, the next one, once you share your picture, you're going to draw, right, a representation of the pattern you found or you created, but now you're going to use symbols to represent that pattern. And you can use different kinds of symbols, such as numbers or hand signals or movements or sounds or shapes, anything really that you can come up with, or you can even use letters and colors, any representation you can think of to help represent that pattern, right? And so there's an example of that in the next slide deck that I think would be helpful. And so if, right, for example, you find a pattern on your curtain and that's the pattern you were able to identify, how then do you describe that pattern and how can you connect it, right, so that it's represented through symbols? And those symbols can be anything you decide they are, right? And so in that first one, we see they use triangles, right? And we see they represented sounds and they use the beep, bop, right? In the second example, you see someone found a pattern in the beaded bracelet. And to represent the pattern in the beaded bracelet, they use hand signals, right? And so thinking of just having flexibility in what symbols you want to use to represent the pattern you first identified and you put on the Padlet. And so, again, all of these instructions are in the collaborative file that you all have access to. So if you go back and you scroll past your Dear Math poem, instructions are right there. Yeah, the playing with patterns. So first you have a conversation around the word pattern. You'll move around your identifying, right? Scan the room, but also invite you to stand up, feel textures, listen to sounds, identify a pattern, snap a picture of it, upload it on the Padlet. And then once you've all done that, you can share with your group around what patterns you found. And then you're going to create your visual representation of the pattern. And I'm going to also invite you to upload that on the Padlet. And we'll come back and have a conversation of what that experience was like for you, talk about some of the patterns you found, right? And some of your symbolic representations of that pattern. And so now Denise is going to send you off to breakout rooms. And then you can scan. I think for me, uploading on a Padlet is super easy when I scan it on my phone. And so you have the QR code to scan it on the phone. If you don't want to use the phone, then we can also provide the link in the chat for that Padlet. All right, and so now we're going to send you off to breakout rooms. We'll do about 7 minutes for this activity, and then we can check in. We'll check in on the Padlet and see if you need more time. And so, yay, I'm already seeing some patterns and natures, patterns with bricks. Yes, feel free to drop in as many as you want. Or also, you could scan your phone for pictures, right? And if you see any pictures already there, but we really want to give you the opportunity to scan your environment and find some patterns wherever it is you're joining us from today. So, all right. Denise is going to go ahead and send you off to your breakout rooms, and then instructions are available for you there in that collaborative file. I think I have the Padlet link here. I could post it in the chat. All right. There it goes. And then I'm also, oh, there, Denise had already done it. She put the collab file again. All right. And so sending you all off to breakout rooms again. Way back. There it goes. Thank you all for making your way back. Denise and I were looking at the pictures you were posting on the Padlet, some super cool ones up there. You've identified some patterns in in nature. Someone made a pattern with Lucky Charms. Who was that? That's super cool. Then we also see again patterns in nature. What else is on there? The carpets. Is that wallpaper? Super cool. In the rug. That's like a furniture, a piece of furniture, right? And so thank you so much for taking the time to explore your environment and identify some patterns. Did anyone get to the part where you had to make a symbol, like a representation of your pattern using symbols? Did anyone get to that piece? Not yet, didn't have enough time. Do you all want a little more time to work on it and just pick one of the patterns you've identified and try your best? And right, no, it's just for fun. Don't stress out too much out about it, but just think of a way that you can represent the pattern that you found using symbols. Do we want to give it a shot and go back to breakout rooms for about 2-3 minutes?
I
Okay,
guess we're trying to
let's.
figure out how to load it.
Oh, how to load it on the Padlet.
Hmm.
Okay, was that the difficult piece? So you did try doing a symbol representation of the pattern?
I'm just trying to how to upload it up my pattern.
Okay,
Whether it's my picture or the drawing one.
Maybe they can
okay.
just show it.
Yeah, if you can just show it on the screen, that way we're not spending too much time on just technical stuff. Does anyone want to share their pattern just on the screen?
I I put I just took a picture of a football of a soccer ball. That's mine right there. And so I was putting the soccer and then this that blue splotch because I noticed that there was a pattern. It was like if I went around that symbol, that shape, I don't know if it's a pentagon or octagon, whatever that shape is, it was like splotch, no splotch, splotch, no splotch, splotch, no splotch. And so I just used the soccer ball as the one with the all orange and then the drop as like where to represent where one of the shapes had that blue splotch. And then I just put A, B, A, B, A, B. That was the other pattern that represented.
Oh yeah, thank you for sharing it. Yeah, super creative. You did it with the emojis on there, and then you did it with the letters. That's super cool. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't think I would have ever thought of doing it that way, but thanks. Did anyone else draw their symbol representation of the pattern that they can just hold up to the screen and show it to us, just to get some ideas of what everyone did for their symbols?
I can share mine. Mine was like the quilt. It was a ABCD pattern, and I did like hand movements. I did slap, clap, stomp your feet, and raise your hand so the kids can repeat it that way.
Is that the one we're seeing on the screen now?
Yes.
And you did snap, clap,
Clap, stomp your feet, raise your hands, and then they would repeat it.
snap, clap, step your feet, raise your hand. Cool. That's super cool and fun. Thank you so much, Ruby, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you. Right now, I for participating in the activity. I love the like hands-on and connecting it to a song, and then the using the emojis on there too was also super creative. And so now I want us to think about in your opportunity that you had to look in your environment and explore patterns, and then just trying to think of a way to put that into a symbolic representation of your pattern. I want us to reflect in what ways was this experience playful, if at all playful, right? Didn't have to be playful for you, but if at all, how was this experience playful? And then I want us to think about, did this feel like a math activity, right? Did this, what you were doing just now, did it feel like math? Why or why not? And so you could drop it in the chat, but I'm going to invite you to turn on your mics and just jump into the conversation. Did this feel like math? Why or why not? And was it at all playful for you?
I just want to share my opinion on it. I mean, for me, it's fun because I've been doing it for so many years that now I know what basic things can be, consider a pattern or a mathematical concept. Um, but for adults, sometimes it's like, we forget those basic things that we think automatically as, like coding 010101, right? I don't understand any of that, but I know that these patterns, and it's the early stages. So for me it's fun just looking around because I've been doing it for so many years, and so um it's easy and simple to identify.
Can I add on to what Veronica said?
Yes, please.
So I agree with Veronica, but I would like to share one thing that was a big obstacle and barrier for me of transferring my knowledge, or what I thought was patterns, which is, what Veronica talked about and what we did, and applying it to the sciences now, especially with NGSS, and talking about what patterns do you see in, the environment, and then or just patterns in people's behaviors. And that's where it becomes more abstract. And that's where I did not understand, what do you mean by patterns? Like, and people would have to explain to me of, well, patterns of, here you don't see this animal. Why don't you see this animal here, but you see this animal here? So for me, going from this very concrete, like repetitive stuff that you can see visually, um, but applying it to bigger, like abstract concepts or the sciences, that was the challenge, especially when I went from teaching first grade to fifth and sixth grade and having to teach that, applying it in the sciences.
I definitely hear you with that one, right? So how do we make that connection, right, from the concrete to the more abstract? And then from the previous comment, right, in hearing you speak about, well, this was fun for me, but I'm familiar with patterns. I know the importance of patterns. I had in my notes to share with you, right, that if you're anything like me, I, in the beginning, when I first was introduced to this activity and a new way or a new approach of visual of thinking of math and my math mindsets, we were asked to engage with patterns in something like this. And my first immediate thought was, well, what do patterns have to do with anything, right? How are patterns math? Because I had this preconcept, I had this notion of math being only like numbers and formulas. And so I had a very narrow view of what math was. Right. And so, in thinking of the importance of patterns, right, and why they play such an important part in early childhood math, well, it's because they really lay the foundation for that work that's coming up in the upper grades, right? Like you mentioned, and patterns are an important part in algebraic thinking, because when children learn to recognize, create, and even extend those patterns, they're starting to build the skills that they'll later use, right, in algebra and higher level math, right, in fifth, sixth grade, and beyond, like you said. And so thinking of of how we support these higher level skills in the upper grades, right? Then we might also want to consider starting off with the very concrete, and giving them also the opportunity to engage in some of this of these activities that may seem more geared toward the lower grade, right? But you can definitely bring this into the upper grades, and use that as an opportunity to connect the concrete with the more abstract, right? You'll be finding you've already identified a pattern. We can do that. Now let's build that connection and find a way to connect it with what we're doing here, right, in upper grades. I don't know if that's making any sense, but I did want to highlight that I myself also found myself thinking of, well, what do patterns have to do with math? How are patterns connected with math? And so part of that is, right, is that when we give our kiddos the opportunity to learn, recognize, and extend on these patterns, right, they're working towards skills that they'll find, that they'll need, right, in higher level math. Patterns, right, are also, so they also support cognitive development because they help strengthen memory, right? They're working on sequencing and problem solving, and they help students and children and us, right, make predictions about what comes next. And then finally, patterns help children connect math to the real world, right? And so again, thinking about this, connecting the concrete to the abstract. And so identifying, right, that patterns are everywhere in nature is how some of you identify some patterns in natures, in music and sound, connecting that to body movement patterns and language, and patterns that we find in our daily routines, right? Helping kiddos explore these helps, and making the connection, right, that math is meaningful and patterns are present, right, in their everyday life, and making that connection to math. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but definitely would recommend taking the opportunity with older kiddos, right? Finding an opportunity to connect with the concrete first, giving the opportunity for them to engage in the concrete, and then moving on to the more abstract and more complex skills that they'll have to engage with through NGSS standards and other math standards, right? All right. Here on the screen, Denise is also sharing with you. This is part of a resource. So earlier in the session, I shared a participant folder with you. Here in this resource, it's uploaded in there and available for you to download. And so the pattern activity and instructions for the activity are there. And so this was the activity for adults. But then if you scroll beyond that first activity, right, there's activities for children and how you can help children support their learning about patterns, right? And some literature and books that you can explore that are related to helping children start thinking about patterns and making those connections into how it's relating to math. And so just some additional resources for you there to explore. And then also all of those books that are shared available for you in Spanish. Denise and I took the opportunity to browse some of these videos, right? And a lot of them were available as read alouds in YouTube. So also just thinking of resources that you have available to you, right, that you can bring back to your classroom. And so when introducing, right, the strategy, or when beginning to think about patterns, connecting that to literacy, right, and giving children some background on patterns is also a good idea. And I'm sure practices that you're already engaging and implementing in your classroom spaces. All right. So now that was the first strategy, right? To make math playful and joyful. And then the second strategy is to recognize that math is for everyone, right? And so with that, I want to talk about some implicit biases, right, that we might carry with us. And implicit biases are unconscious attitudes and beliefs we form without consciously knowing it or realizing it. And these biases can affect our math expectations of students, right? Decisions we take, and even some of our interactions with math and the children that we serve. And they can also lead to behaviors that right, unfortunately can reinforce stereotypes. When thinking of stereotypes, right, we think that stereotypes are often based on these biases that we have on gender, on race, on culture and ethnicity, even language, right, ability, and many other factors. And stereotypes can influence our feelings and thoughts about math throughout life, right? Stereotypes can lead to math myths that can be harmful to us and to the children and family we work with, right? And so a common math myth that I want to take the time to address is that people are either born with math ability, right, or they're not. And so the big myth, right? We want to shift away from that thinking. Another a huge myth, right, is that some groups of people are likely to be better or worse at math, right? And really, nothing could be further from the truth, right? The fact is that everyone has the capacity to develop their math skills and their positive math mindsets. And all children are born with the capacity to learn math. So all children are capable. Um, Another myth that you may have heard of, right, is that boys are better at math than girls are. Um, and the fact is that there is research, right, that has been conducted with children ages 6 months to 8 years that shows and demonstrate and has demonstrated time and time again that boys and girls are equally capable of developing math skills, right? So recognizing, right, strategy two is recognizing that math is for everyone, right? That some of those implicit biases that we carry without knowing, without intending to cause any harm, can in fact contribute to us reinforcing some of those stereotypes and math myths, right? Like the being born with math ability is something you either have or you don't. And again, just shifting away from some of those thoughts and centering, right, that everyone has the capacity to develop their math skills and to also do that through a positive math mindset. Right. And again, highlighting the research that shows that boys and girls, right, are equally have the equal capacity, right, to are capable of developing math skills. All right. And so let's move on to the next slide. And in the next slide, we'll see, right, that the strategy is important in the work that we do because we do want to actively work to disrupt some of these math stereotypes, right? And so as educators, we can be active about doing this and sending and verbalizing, right, the message and sharing that math is for everyone, right? And all children can develop positive mindsets by doing some of the following, right? We can actively disrupt some of these stereotypes by offering playful learning opportunities to all children. For example, inviting boys to the dramatic play centers, right, or girls to the block area. So I'm thinking of the way our classroom is set up, reflecting on are do girls tend to gravitate toward one area of the play center, and how can we be strategic in making sure that all genders, right, have equal access to all of those engagement play center areas that we have in our classrooms. Another way that we can disrupt some of these math stereotypes is holding high expectations for all children, right, regardless of background. And so being very intentional about making sure that the way we support students in math and science, right, is equally distributed among everyone, all the students represented in our classroom. And then, of course, offering meaningful learning experiences, right, with different entry points to build on the strengths and meet the needs of all children, including children who have disabilities or delays. So just thinking about, right, math can look different for everyone, and offering that flexibility and options for our students is going to be super powerful in giving all our children access to that rich math content. And then again, having a growth mindset is super important. I know having a growth mindset is huge in education, right? And now we're going to talk about and dig a little deeper into how we can specifically have a growth mindset and use growth mindset language, right, with the children that we work with. If we consider and keep all of these practices, right, at the center of our instruction, then we're actively working toward disrupting some of these math stereotypes and protecting the idea, right, and the fact that math is for everyone. And so if we can go on to the next one, and then and so now is where we'll dig a little deeper into growth and fixed mindsets, right, which I'm sure you all are probably already familiar with. Having a growth mindset is the belief that skills and knowledge can improve over time, right, with effort, learning, and persistent. Whereas opposed to a fixed mindset is the belief that skills and knowledges cannot change. So not spending too much time on that one, I want to move on to specifically how our language, right, can be shifted to a growth mindset specifically around math. And so some of these might be comments that you've heard in the past, right? Or that resonate with you. Things like math makes me feel anxious. I don't like to do math with my children. I was never good at math, so I don't know how to help my child with math. I know for parents and families, caregivers that I work with, this was often a recurring theme. I don't know how to do the new math, right? I don't know how to help my child. I was never good at it. Or even just simply saying, I don't like math. It's too hard. It's too challenging. It's not for me. And so, in thinking of growth mindset language, right, and the communication that we have with our children, with our caregivers that we serve, how can we use growth mindset language around math to help promote those positive mindsets for our students? And so I want us to take some time to practice responding to some of the fixed mindset statements that I just shared, right? And so let's stop and consider the statement, I was never good at math. I don't know how to help my child with math, right? Fixed mindset statement around math. And so how can we reframe that using growth mindset language, right? To help the caregiver, help the parent see it another way, right? And look at it and approach math through a more growth mindset lens. And so an example of how we could reframe that statement would be is, you know what? You're probably already doing math with your child every day, right? And you may not realize it, but math happens every day through your just daily interactions and routines. Let's discuss how might we can playfully support your child with math, because remember, math is all around us. And so just practicing identifying some of that fixed mindset language around math, and then when we do identify, using that as an opportunity to sort of reframe those fixed mindsets. And so very quickly, I want us to just practice in the chat. Let's pick a comment. Let's do the I don't like math, it's too hard. Can we try shifting away from that fixed mindset language and reframing that into a more positive growth mindset language around math? So how would we respond, or how can we shift away from that comment, I don't like math, it's too hard? What could we possibly respond? What would we say to someone who shares that? I don't like math, it's too hard. And we could drop our ideas in the chat, and then I can read some of those. Right? Maybe we could start off with some validation. Yes, Michelle. So I just said some validation, right? So math can be difficult, right? But let me help you learn math in ways that are easier for you, right? Can you please tell me why? Maybe getting to know that student a little better and identifying, right, about the roots of these feelings, right? Why does the student feel like this? We dug into our own math mindsets earlier, right? And so taking the opportunity to learn more about students' experiences with math, right, may help us better support the student. Good. I bet you have already been teaching your child math and you didn't even know it. Yes, right. A lot of the times it's that. It's connecting to the concrete also for our caregivers and our families. Good. And so um we want to be mindful, right, of when these comments come to surface, that we're able to identify those comments and shift away from this fixed mentality or mindset around math, right, and use that as an opportunity to hopefully, right, work towards shifting some of these mindsets. And for the student that says, I don't like math, it's too hard, and thinking of all the work that we've done ourselves and reflecting our math mindsets and the importance of having a positive math mindset, right? Because that has consequences, right, in the work that we do around math, helping the student move away from that and creating just more positive experiences around math. I love that, David. I get it. So affirming, right? I get it, but you might surprise yourself if you give it another try. Yes, and then of course provide scaffolds for the student. Yes, take into consideration the child's interest, right? Make it relevant to their lives. Make it something that's going to draw in their attention and engage them, right? Something that they can connect with. Let's do dinosaurs. I love the affirmations. Yes, math can be challenging, right? We're not moving away from that. We're not saying math is easy, right? It can be challenging, but challenging can be engaging and it can be fun. Perfect. I love all of these comments. So thank you so much. Again, just wanted to highlight, right, how we have to be able to catch these moments, because yes, we're working on developing math skills with our students and those that we work with, but we're also working on building these positive math mindsets, right? And we can do that through having a growth mindset language approach to math. So thank you so much for participating in the chat. In the next slide, right, we've already addressed some of this, but again, just really want to highlight how our past and present experiences with math can surface many emotions, including anxiety. And so I'm sure you've all heard about math anxiety, right, which involves very real, right, feelings of fear, worry, or even uneasiness about math. It also, right, can manifest itself in physical changes in our body. I talked earlier about how my eighth grade teacher would pass out test scores. I remember my heartbeat starting to race, right? And so it can also cause physical changes, right? We can get sweaty, our heart can start pumping, many other things. And so it's not just, right, thoughts. Our bodies has reactions to that. And so just want to highlight, right, and this number was surprising to me, and I was like, whoa, this is intense. But did you know that 93%, 93% of adults have experienced math anxiety? That's a huge amount. And so many adults are able to connect their math anxiety with have had a math anxious parent or teacher. So just to again highlight the importance of our own math mindsets and the consequences that has, right, for our children, for our students. And so even so, right, the way we feel and think about math, again, remembering that our mindsets can shift and change over time. And so strategy number three, we as teachers, as educators, and we can bring this right with our students and children. And we just saw a little bit of that using the growth mindset math language. But a strategy is that we are able to identify when we're feeling frustrated or worried, right, about a situation that specifically involves math, that we take a break and we stop, right, and consider the source of our feelings. So just pausing, noticing, and naming our feelings about math can help us like regain focus, right? And understanding why those feelings are sort of generating in ourselves. It can help us be just more aware, right? And reshift the focus. And so math anxiety, right? It's real. Yes, it's an anxiety for getting into a graduate program. Yes, I'm reading your comments in the chat, right? And so math anxiety, very real. We can stop, reflect, identify those feelings ourselves, and we can also help our children and those that we serve engage in some of these reflection activities also, right? So that they recognize what's going on and hopefully be able to dig in a little deeper into what's causing this math anxiety. Um, and so reflection, right, can help us process our feelings and thoughts about math. And so, for example, again, when you start feeling this anxiety, should you ever feel it, there are activities that we want to engage our children in and reframe our worries and use this as an opportunity to shift away from that, right? And think about how can we use the growth mindset perspective to again help us center and make sure that not only we know, but that our students are very well aware of and know and live, right, with this thought that math is for everyone, right? And math is for them, math is for everyone. All right. And so in thinking of that, I want us to go back to our Dear Math poem and work on part 2. And so given all of that you've heard, I want us to work on our part 2 of our poem and think about math, right? And so hopefully, I remember when I first did these activities, I thought like, wow, this space in thinking and reflecting about math has been a little healing for me. And so hopefully some of you share that experience. But now I want us to go back to our collab activity, and I'm realizing that you might need additional space to add the part 2 of your math poem. And so if you feel you need more space in your slide deck, just go ahead and click enter and create another slide, and you can continue your math poem there. But now we're going back and reflecting. Now, dear math, when I think of you, I feel, or a fun moment, right? And so highlighting and trying to pick out one of those fun moments that I had with you today was, and then finally, now when I am challenged by you, I will think about, or I think about. Again, just some guiding sentence rhymes. Please don't feel limited by these, or even that you have to use these, right? We just want you to reflect that now, after everything that we've shared together. Now, what are your feelings about math? So we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms and add the second part of our poem. And we'll do 5 minutes, and then we'll check in to see if you all need more time. So let's go breakout rooms, 5 minutes, and we're working on our second part of the math poem. And again, if you need more space, just add another slide. Yay, thank you. Thank you for remembering to hit the record button. But again, thank you so much for participating in that second part and completing that second part of your Dear Math poems. There's still another part to add to that math poem. And so for the sake of time, I won't invite you to share this time, but maybe once we complete part 3, I'll invite anyone who wants to share their math poem with the whole group. And so now I want to move on to the fourth strategy, which is noticing that math is everywhere. And this has already just organically come up in our conversations, right? We've talked about how we've learned math from our grandparents, from our home environment, right? When we were having to help out with chickens, right? And so again, I think this is a group that all believes, right, that math is everywhere, and it definitely isn't confined to the boundaries of the classroom. And so just a few examples of where we see math in our everyday practices, right? Cooking. I am not a great cook. I don't like to cook. But I definitely see, right, how math happens during cooking, whether that's through measuring spoons and measuring cups, right, used for ingredients, right? Maybe part of my problem is that I don't always measure, and that's why I say I'm not a good cook. But we also think about math, right, in other areas beyond cooking. Like I shared with you, the loading the groceries onto the back of your trunk, right, and how you organize those, and how that's special awareness, and how there you can identify some patterns. Someone earlier shared also, I shared the doing laundry, right? When you're measuring how much detergent soap goes in that, or what's the ratio of clothes, right? And how much detergent soap you need for that. And so just very quickly in the chat, can anyone else think of ways we do math just every day, right? I'm thinking now, like, oh, well, when I make my coffee, I have to think about math, right? And I have to think about how much, to think about math and my health, about how much sugar I'm putting in my coffee. But anything else that you can just quickly think of that we don't typically connect that to math that we do in our everyday lives? I'm going to open it up in the chat, and I kind of want to read your responses and see what we can come up with. Right. And as you're thinking of those, um, again, just highlighting how these experiences impact how we feel about math and how we think about math. And so thinking for our parents, right, who say, this is not how I learned math, I can't support my kiddos with math, taking the time to highlight how they're already engaging in some of these mathematical practices through everyday experiences, right, is going to be really important in helping shift their mindset, right, as parents, caregivers who support children. And then in turn, right, hoping that shift of that mindset shift also impacts the mindset of the students they're working with. Our daily schedule, sequencing, order, right, our pattern of events. Yes, all of those. Someone said driving, estimating time, miles, distance, drawing. Yes, proportions. Yes, all of those. And so just things in our everyday life, right? My daughter gets super frustrated with me because anytime I see like science or math in her everyday, I'm like, Ale, her name is Ale, you're doing math right now, you're doing science right now. And so I try to be very explicit about highlighting those moments for her, right? And we should too, right, in our classroom spaces with our students. And so in all of those everyday examples that you shared, right, people are using math, right? And experiences with math in everyday environments and routines can really impact how we feel and think about math. And so thank you for sharing those. All right, now in thinking of math, now we're going to watch a video, right, of Wide World of Math, Cry Daddy. And so let's take a moment to watch this video. And then when we come back, we're going to just reflect on, as you watch the video, right? Think of any math myths you saw in the video or any math stereotypes that surface in the video. Think about any experiences that may have contributed to a math mindset as you watch the video, right? And then we'll come back and talk about it together. So let's watch the video.
Math madness has taken over California as families around the state are finding that math is truly everywhere.
That's right, Phil. Parents from Eureka to Escondido are joining the movement. But the journey to math mastery isn't always easy.
It sure is not, Ange. So today we're profiling one young dad who's come a long way. Meet Chet Kingston.
Math? How am I supposed to teach him math when I wasn't good at it when I was a kid? Tell me.
That was Chet then, but today we have him live for an update.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Angie.
Chet, we understand you had a breakthrough and began to open your eyes to the world of math around you. What happened?
Well, Angie, I literally opened my eyes to the world of math around me. I mean, it's at home, in the car, on the playground, at the beach.
Wow, what an
You can count breakfast cereal at breakfast. You can fill buckets of sand at the sandbox. You can point out shapes on the street. It's everywhere.
I mean, there's no
It's
end
at the
to
grocery
math
store.
opportunity.
It's in the garden. It's at Grandma's. At Uncle Ned's. I mean, come on.
I think you stop.
Okay. Chet became a true inspiration, and now he's coaching other parents.
I am.
So, Chet, what's the most satisfying part of your job?
It's watching parents turn their little ones into little mathletes.
What's a mathlete?
It means you've conquered your fear of fractions, your addition anxiety, your subtraction stress. I am a mathlete.
Chet's message to parents: don't pass on your fear of math to your child.
Are you guys mathletes? Huh?
I'm a mathlete. Come on, you. I'm a mathlete.
All right. Should we all say that together or is that going too far? No, I won't make you say we are mathletes, no. But I do want us to take the time and reflect on the video, right? What were some of the math myths or stereotypes that may have influenced Chet's experiences? So did you catch on to any of those? Did you see any of those surface in the video? He was looking pretty distressed in that first part of the video, but anyone think of any possible math myths or stereotypes that may have influenced Chet's experiences? And then as you drop those in the chat, right, what experiences do you think may have changed Chet's math mindset, right? Because in the beginning of the video, he's looking pretty stressed out, and then at the end, he's super enthusiastic about math, right? And so what do you think helped make that shift for him? Not being good at math as a kid, right? And then just feeling stressed out about not being able to support their student. Sharing, right? I was not good at math as a kid. Yes. And so there was a shift, right? Good thing there was a math mindset shift, because at the end of the video, we see him super enthusiastic about math. Yes, very thoughtful of him to cover his child's ears when he said he didn't like math. I didn't catch that one. He opens up, yes, so he opens up to math all around him, right? And I'm assuming and thinking that realizing that math is everywhere helped shift that mindset for him, right? Because math, understanding and knowing that math is everywhere, it takes away some of that anxiety. Someone said doing math in low stakes environment, right? And so if I'm being told I'm doing math while I'm driving, well, that's something I do every day, right? And something that I can connect that if there's no traffic, that positive experience with math, right? Yes, shifting away that math has to be a formal lesson. Thank you so much for highlighting that, Lisa, right? So again, moving away from that thought that math is confined to like formal instruction within the classroom. Math is everywhere. Thank you so much for highlighting that. Yes, I love it. All right. And so now I want us to think about, right, and maybe we can use Chet and his son as an example. How can we support children's positive math mindsets, right? And so we all already we know this, right? But do our families and our students know that they are already engaging in math as part of their everyday routines and activities? So like I just mentioned, when you see things happening, when you see your students out in the playground, right, not necessarily in the class, anything, right, any moment that you can recognize and highlight and say, right, you know you're doing math right now, and being very vocal and explicit about math being everywhere and math being for everyone, right? Through that, we're not only developing our own positive math mindsets, but we're helping children develop their own positive math mindsets, right? And again, the way the way we think about and feel about math, it matters, right? Because the amount of time that we spend with math is directly correlated to that, right? And it also influences the types of math learning experiences that we offer to our children. And so let's go ahead to the next one. Just want to share some resources available. So that video, right, and those of you that work closer with community members and with caregivers, is available for you on the resources here that we're going to share with you. There's also a lot of other videos on there that feel free to explore, but just want to make sure you all have access to these videos and maybe sharing some of these videos, right, with your students. Yes, thank you so much, Veronica, for sharing that. So it took someone, right? It took a teacher to take the time and the strategy, and maybe a teacher with a more positive mindset, right, to shift that feeling for you, right, and see it in the real world. Yes. And I was distance teaching that year that COVID hit, and we had our geometry unit, right? And so I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to highlight and start to get children in making that connection with math is everywhere. And so when we were talking about shapes, right, I had them identify and think about shapes that they were seeing in their home. And so very different experiences, and doing that through a piece of paper, right? Maybe having to trace those shapes, color them, just thinking of traditional ways that we teach shapes in kinder and in the lower grades. Whereas to now I'm asking them like, hey, shapes are everywhere. Just right, open your eyes like Chet did, and find those in your near surroundings. And so just always being very intentional about how we connect this with our students. And so some of the resources are shared with you. And with that, I want us to close with our Dear Math Part 3 part of the poem. And so with that, I want us to go back into our breakout rooms, and we'll do 5 minutes. We're going to close out and complete our Dear Math poem, and just try to think about going forward after our time spent together today, right? What do you want to feel about math? What do you want to continue? What do you want to hold on to, right? Or what do you want to shift? And then highlighting that by thinking positively about math, you can, right? What are the possibilities if you have this positive math mindset? What are some of the challenges you can overcome? And again, these are all just suggestions. They're guidance, right? They're suggestions. Please don't feel limited to these. If you want to expand, expand. If you want to focus on one of these, focus on one of these. Totally up to you, right? And so we'll give you 5 minutes to go out in your breakout groups and finalize the final part of our Dear Math poem. If you didn't complete it, that's okay, right? We'll have time throughout the year maybe to go back and revisit that poem. We will save your collaborative files, and you'll always have access to those. And so if you feel like there's something that needed to be said, but you didn't get the time to do that, that's okay. We can revisit these. But before I move on, I want to invite someone to share their completed poem. I don't know if anyone is willing to share that with us.
I can share it.
Yay, thank you so much.
I just need to find it. Mine's 2 pages. I just duplicated and I was
Yes,
group
and
one.
that's totally okay. I think after we send you to the first breakout room, we realize you may need more space. But thank you so much, Aida, for sharing.
Okay. Dear Math, as a child, when I thought of you, the whole thing? Okay. Dear Math, as a child, when I thought of you, I felt anxiety because I did not understand you and failed a lot of tests. When I got to community college, I started to understand you more because I had a math professor that used visuals, analogies, and really made it relevant. When I started teaching math in elementary with visuals, manipulatives, videos, and talk, I enjoyed it and started to really understand it, including when the change came from memorization to understanding. I was just referring to like the mid 2000s or the whole shift. Um, when I had to teach math and Spanish in 5th grade, I was taken back to my early elementary years of anxiety because I did not have the language or support to do it well. As a parent with 2 kids who are really good at math, I understand how experiences matter, games matter, language matters, real life situations matter, and relevance matters. And then there's the next page. Today, I was reminded that you are all around me and that I naturally use you every day in ways that I don't even realize. Today, I had fun taking pictures of you and seeing others' representations of you through images, letters, pictures, and sounds. You are less scary when I understand you and I see you. You are fun when you are not represented with a failing grade. Going forward, I want to be able to see math challenges as something that are temporary and overcomable when it becomes fun, visible, and relevant.
All right, Aida. Thank you so much. That's a mic drop right there. We can now go home now. No, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Aida, for sharing. Right, and I think you captured really our goals for this session. Right, was it just starting to think about how we can make math minds, how we can be very mindful of what our math mindsets are and the implications of our math mindsets to the children that we serve. And so thank you so much for sharing your poem with us. I know that today we were talking about, Denise and I were reflecting a little bit on how the session is going while you were all in breakout rooms. And while we identified some of these strategies like disrupting math stereotypes, right, the math mindsets, I kind of mentioned very briefly that I was starting to see these more as approaches, right, to teaching and engaging with math. A lot of this, and we were intentional about doing this in this first session in our first time together, right, because through these approaches, we'll continue to move on through that lens, right? Through building positive mindsets, to actively working toward disrupting math stereotypes, to making sure that our communities, our students know that math is everywhere and that math is for everyone. In the following sessions, right, we'll get more into specific activities that you can take back, right? And you can take all of this back, of course, but more into specific instructional activities for you to implement in your classroom spaces. And so thank you so much for doing this with us today. We have about 20 minutes left. I took a lot of Denise's time. I'm so sorry, but now Denise is going to talk about, right, the importance of developing language, right, through these math engaging and playful opportunities in our classroom. So thank you all so much. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Denise.
All right. Thank you so much, Natalie. And so I just wanted to take some time to kind of give us a context for this work that we're going to be doing throughout the next couple years as part of this cohort. We are CABE, we are an advocacy organization. We're all about educational equity. And so we definitely want to talk about our multilingual learners. I know that most of us, I think everyone here right now is serving students in California. And so now that we have some ideas on approaches to math, let's think about the students that we're serving in our classroom. And so I wanted to quickly share some data and some numbers on the types of learners that we have here in California. And so about a quarter of children in preschool settings are multilingual learners. So that means that 1 in 4 students in preschool, they are multilingual learners. They're bilingual, multilingual students. In the public school setting, about almost about 20% of the total enrollment of students in California public schools are labeled as multilingual English learners. And just very in the next slide, I'll go ahead and share some information on terminology because there is a lot of terms out there when we are speaking and sharing about English learners. And so I will review that in just a moment. And then also we do want to note that multilingualism in California is the norm, right? This is 40% of our students. And so really it's the norm. They shouldn't be marginalized, right? We need to have an asset-based approach when we're thinking about our multilingual learners. And so we need to make sure that they are having, that they're getting access to grade level content, although some of our students are still developing academic language in English, right? That doesn't mean that we stop and wait until they learn English, right? We can do both. We can develop that content understanding. They can learn math while they're also learning that really discipline specific math vocabulary as well, right? We can do both. Um, we also know that being multilingual, being bilingual, and really highlighting and supporting our students' home language. We know that this has cognitive benefits. We know it has social benefits and it also has academic benefits. And then I do want to note that I know that many of you also do serve in dual immersion settings. And so, of course, right, all those pieces fit. And so before we continue, I wanted to just take a quick moment to reflect on the terminology that we use when we are talking about our students who speak more than one language, right? And so in California, usually the term that we see is English learners, right? And so this is usually used in grades TK through 12 in the public school education system. It's a formal term that is used to classify students who are learning English, right? They're not yet proficient in English. So now we are moving away from using that term. CABE has shifted and we use now multilingual English learners. And so these students are working towards English proficiency as well, but this term also highlights and emphasizes that these students are multilingual, right? Although they're learning English, we are also highlighting that home native language that they have. Whereas English learner, that term kind of doesn't really acknowledge that. And so you moving forward, you'll see that in our sessions and the work that we do, we're going to be using the term multilingual English learner. Um, and then we also have the term multilingual learners. And this term is for any student that is learning or using multiple languages. And so a multilingual learner may be formally classified as an English learner, or a multilingual learner may not be formally classified as an English learner, but that student is still using more than one language, right? Maybe at home or in school. And so we really want to be mindful of the terms that we use when we're speaking about our multilingual learners. And finally, the very last term that I included here is the term dual language learners. And so this term is usually used in early childhood education settings. So usually in daycare centers, preschools. They use this term just to, and it sort of also means multilingual learner, but usually it's used for really young, very young learners, usually between the ages of 0 to 8. And so I want you to take a quick moment to reflect and maybe unmute or share in the chat box. Just take a quick moment to reflect on the students that you serve, whether you serve, a whole site or maybe you have your own classroom. Think of approximately how many students that you serve are multilingual learners. And you don't have to come up with an exact number, but you can. You can share a number, you can say many or most or a few. You can unmute or share in the chat box, but chances are, we're in California, and so you you probably or might have at least one multilingual learner in your classroom, even if you know that they speak another language at home, and just to kind of see how this data fits with our group specifically. All right. Okay, I see Ida's comment here that you use both English learner and multilingual learner because EL is for legal purposes. Yes, yes, I know that the term EL is used as a formal classification, so we do want to be mindful of that. All right, thank you, Luz, for sharing about 80% at 3 sites. So most of your students are multilingual learners. Maria Jaramillo, most of them in my class are multilingual learners. Gabriela, thank you for sharing. You work at a dual language school, so almost the entire school are multilingual learners. Yeah, I see Ruby has some in her class. Thank you so much for sharing. And so this is why we wanted to take a moment to reflect on this information because moving forward, right, we are going to be embedding different strategies and just information and resources specifically to support our multilingual learners. And we also want to make our connection to the English Learner Roadmap policy. And so in California, we have the English Learner Roadmap policy to support our multilingual English learners. And throughout our sessions, we're going to be really connecting with Principle 2 of this California policy. And Principle 2 is intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access, right? And although this roadmap and this policy was specifically built and made for our multilingual learners, right? These are the students that we really want to make sure we're ensuring and we're planning for, especially if they're in our classrooms. Um, we want to make sure that we're providing this meaningful access, right? Again, we want to give them access to that grade level learning, although they may still be learning English. And so the work that we're going to be doing throughout this cohort, early math and STEAM learning, naturally provides opportunities for this rich language use, right? When they're engaging in this type of learning, students are going to be using a lot of language through describing, through questioning, through comparing, and through predicting. And so we really want to make sure that we're engaging students in this meaningful intellectual quality of instruction, but we also want to ensure that we're providing those supports to ensure that they're being successful in being able to participate, but also being able to develop the language and the content simultaneously. And so the work that we're going to be doing is really going to be highlighting this, and we're going to be keeping this piece in mind moving forward. And I'll go ahead and drop in the chat box. CABE has some great resources on the EL roadmap policy in case it's been a little while since you've seen it, because I know you're all very busy educators, but I'll go ahead and drop a link for the POM card. The POM card on the EL roadmap policy is just kind of like a little snippet version of the big full text. And so just in case if you want to have some additional reading on Principle 2 or the other principles in the EL roadmap policy, you have that resource available to you. All right, and so making that connection with Principle 2 and the learning that we did earlier today with Natalie, right? Through play, students are solving these real world math problems, right? They can be practicing these early math skills through play. It allows for students to be able to express themselves in different ways, right? And when we're thinking about that, having multiple modalities of expression is really key for our multilingual learners, right? They're at different proficiency levels. And so we want to make sure we're giving them multiple ways to be able to express what they've learned, right? While they're still developing that language. And so through this approach to learning math, they're going to be able to show what they know through speaking, through drawing, through using manipulatives. They can even act it out and role play. And so it really lends itself to that. And again, hand in hand, it's going to be supporting that language development, right? Giving them opportunities to practice that vocabulary. These activities are collaborative, right? Students are going to be speaking to each other and using language. It offers through play, it offers a lot of developmentally appropriate ways for children, all children, right? Everybody in our classroom will benefit from this, but especially for our multilingual learners, it's really going to help them engage in these meaningful, joyful math learning experiences that's going to help them develop the language. I have a quick little highlight here from Dr. Ofelia Garcia's research on translanguaging and when students are mixing languages, right? Research shows that these bilingual or multilingual children, right, they can't really separate their languages, right, into fixed compartments. They're using their full linguistic repertoire to make meaning, to solve problems, right, to communicate effectively. And through this process, they're learning language and they're learning content. And so it's not confusion, right? It's a cognitive strategy that really reflects on how the multilingual brain works, whether these children are in bilingual settings or in English only settings, right? It's a natural way for them to make sense of the world. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop here because we have a few minutes left. Um, but we do want to go ahead and make sure that we give you some time to register for our next Zoom session. This is just for another professional development learning session. It's coming up next in a couple weeks on Tuesday, October 21st from 3:30 to 5:30. We'll go ahead and share the link in the chat box. Thank you, Natalie. If you can please take a few seconds now to go ahead and register for that one. And again, we will be posting a recording if for any reason you're not available.
Yeah, and just a reminder, this first month of October is the only month where we'll have two sessions moving forward. Each month will be either a professional development session from a 2 hour long professional development session, like the one we'll have on October 21st, followed by a coaching session the next month, in which we'll be in contact with you to see what times work better for you all. And just we still have some thinking to do about how we organize those coaching groups, right? Because we want to make sure that they're meaningful and responsive to whatever context that you all are in. And so just an overview of the professional development sessions that we have scheduled until the end of this first year of implementation, right? And so again, just thank you so much for spending your morning half of your Saturday with us, right? We still hope that you have time to get some rest and enjoy some time with family or friends or doing whatever it is you need to do to make you feel good, right? And just some time, right, to enjoy to yourselves this weekend. It's lovely weather out there, so we hope you still have time to do that. And so if there are any questions, Denise and I will hang out for a little bit. We also have a feedback form for you to fill out. We know you're running short on time, and so we can also maybe send a follow-up email with those forms. Don't feel like you have to stay behind to complete those. Regarding the survey, we'll be in touch. It feels like some people got the survey, some didn't. And so we'll go through just our list of who received the survey, who didn't, and we'll reach out through more information. Again, if you have any colleagues, friends, anyone who you think would benefit from participating and you want to invite them to join us, we welcome them still into our cohort, right? And then any questions that should come up, just send us a quick email. We're always available and happy to help. Wishing you a great Saturday. Thank you so much. Again, this was just like our launch, right? So like thinking and highlighting and centering how we're going to approach the work. But in our future sessions, right, we'll be working towards specific strategies that you can go back and hands-on these playful activities that you can implement with your own children that you serve. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been great. You were a great audience. Thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Hopefully, we'll see you on the 21st.
Yes.